Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Andrew. Today I want to introduce my new project car. This is a 2000 Mercedes-Benz E320 wagon, and it is rear-wheel drive. That information will become important here in a few seconds. But why this car? Well, if you scroll through my Instagram, I'm kind of a huge W210/S210 chassis enthusiast, and we didn't get the V8 version of this wagon in the United States. It's kind of a shame. We also didn't get the AMG version, which is, also the V8 version, but I digress. And so I want to make a V8 wagon. Why this car? Well, it has a bad transmission. That's the biggest reason. And I didn't pay too much for it. I feel comfortable with how much I'm into this car. So it's the perfect donor car. I also happen to have a 4.3 liter V8 sitting in my garage that'll bolt right up into this car. So anyway, this video is just going to be detailing the problems that this car has currently and my plans for it. And that's about it. So let's get into it. So I know that the first question I'm going to get in the comments is, well, Andrew, why didn't you do a 5.4 liter AMG swap? You're already going to be in here doing all this stuff. Well, because I don't have a 5.4 liter AMG V8 sitting in my garage. I have a 4.3 liter V8 sitting in my garage, just taking up space. So that's the biggest reason. I also just kind of need to put this car together to have a good daily driver again, because I actually had to sell my daily driver to pay for this car. I'm trying to make this a free car at the end of the day. That's a whole nother thing that we might talk about at the end of the video, but yeah, that's the biggest reason. If in the future I find a 5.4 liter to drop in this thing, then I certainly will. But at that time, I'll also want to do a manual swap, which is why being a rear-wheel drive wagon is important, because to do a manual swap, you have to have a rear-wheel drive chassis to begin with. I'm sure there's people out there or ways to do a manual transmission and get it to work with the transfer case and do all that stuff, but the least path of resistance is just to buy a rear-wheel drive car and then get the rear-wheel drive transmission and do it that way. So yeah, that's why having a rear-wheel drive wagon is important, and that's why I'm not doing a 5.4 liter. Yeah, so the transmission, what's wrong with it? Well, it has a 3 to 4 flare. So what that means is when the transmission goes 3 to 4, it kind of revs up and then it comes back down into 4th gear. It doesn't do that all the time. It only does it when it's warm or really hot. And then actually, once it gets warm enough, it will just refuse to shift into 4th gear altogether. So the solution that I found on the internet anyway is, valve body, solenoid, conductor plate replacement, but those aren't surefire ways to fix this problem. My guess is this transmission is just kind of done for. We're just gonna take it all out, put the V8 in there, and call it a day. Of course, that's not the only thing we're going to do to this car. I want to talk about some of my other plans that are a little exciting. Not as exciting as the V8 part, but pretty exciting nonetheless. So anyway, let's talk about those things. The second biggest thing that I'm going to do to this car is a full black interior swap. So that's going to be dashboard, center console, door panels, not the headliner, thankfully. They kept the color the same between all the interior colors, at least for the most part, so that'll be easy. And we're also going to be doing a heated and ventilated seat retrofit. So I had a parts car, which is where that V8 came from, that had heated and ventilated seats that were black. And I was able to pull all the harnesses, the wood trim, everything that's sort of goes with that. And we'll be doing a video on doing that retrofit. So it's actually not going to be that hard. Pulling all that stuff was not as difficult as I thought it was going to be, but it'll be really nice to have those in this car for the wintertime and then for the summertime. Now we're also going to be doing a Command 2.0 or navigation swap. So that's a factory navigation head unit. That's going to be pretty straightforward because we have to pull the dash anyway to put the black one in, and you have to do that in order to replace the bracket to hold the navigation unit, so we're going to be doing that as well. And the last part that we're going to be doing this interior is a wood steering wheel. I have a black leather wood steering wheel. It is so good looking. Not a lot of the US cars got them, so that'll be sort of the crown jewel on the interior. So I'm pretty excited to do all that stuff. On the outside of the car, I want to replace the wheels. I actually had to put these on here because the stock wheels had dry rotted tires that were really dangerous to drive on, even though I went 80 miles on them and had no idea. Yeah, so we're going to get rid of those, and I'm also going to be doing a sport bumper, side skirt, and rear bumper. Now, the sport bumpers are the same thing as the AMG bumpers for the most part, except for the rear bumper has an exhaust cutout for the AMG, and on the sport cars it doesn't. However, we never got the AMG body kit on these in the United States, so sourcing the rear bumper is extremely difficult. The front bumper and the side skirts are exactly the same between the sedan and the wagon, but the rear bumper is slightly different. Now, I could get a replica bumper, and I think that's honestly the way I'm going to go because they're about $500 shipped to my door. But finding an OEM one is extremely hard, and when they do pop up, I mean, who knows how much people are going to be charging for those, maybe $1,500, $2,000. It would be ideal because they look the best, but I think that the replica bumper will just have to do. So that's all the plans that I have for the outside. Let's talk about the problems. Kind of the first issue, and to be honest, this car doesn't have a lot of problems. I was surprised about that because it seems like it was overall taken care of for the most part, but there's some cosmetic things, like there's a hole in the bumper here, but we're gonna replace the bumper anyway, so not a big deal. There's a dent here, and I don't know if this is like fixable by PDR or not, but I'm gonna see if somebody can get this out, like 90% even. I don't know that I wanna go to a body shop, or maybe I'll try to figure it out on my own, who knows, but there's another issue. And then the obvious one is, this door doesn't stay open. So obviously that's an easy fix, we just gotta replace the struts. The other thing that I have to deal with is a little bit of rust. So these cars are notorious for having rust, and right here you can see some of that bubbling up here on the door. I don't know if it's fixable, if I should just get a new door, but there's rust there. And we also have a little bit of rust right there on the sunroof. It's not that bad, and quite frankly I think that I'll be able to do that myself pretty easily. But yeah, that's about it for the issues. It's honestly a pretty sorted car. It just has high mileage and it's a little worn out. There is a suspension issue that we'll talk about once we drive it. But other than that, it drives straight down the road. There's no weird vibrations. All of the buttons on the inside work. I did have a cruise control issue, but I replaced the battery and that seems to have gone away. So that's about it. Oh, you know what? The rear latch doesn't, the rear door, I should say, doesn't lock, but we'll cover that. That's a known issue on these cars. It's pretty easy to fix. But yeah, let's go for a drive. I actually need to get gas, so this is a perfect opportunity. Something that made me really happy driving this thing home was finding out that the AC works. A lot of these cars are getting to that age where, like, evaporator cores are going bad, or AC pumps are on their way out, but this one seems to be in pretty good shape. So the only thing that I found wrong with the suspension, at least on initial inspection and drive, is the front sway bar makes a lot of noise. Couldn't really hear it just then, but it makes like a knocking noise, which is something that's really common on these. I mean, really on any car with rubber bushings, they go bad. It seems like lower control arms and ball joints are fine, but I do need to get a pry bar and all that stuff just to double check. Because normally when those things start to go bad on these cars, the car will wander and have some other weird vibrations, but it seems like the end links and the bushings on the sway bar are the only issue with the suspension. As it turns out though, I have a sway bar in my yard, of course, with brand new bushings and brand new end links, because I had another car that I put those on, but that car ended up getting scrapped. So now I don't think I'm gonna be able to show you that 3 to 4 flare because it takes quite a while for the transmission to warm up and demonstrate that issue. But I did take a video on my phone, which I'll show you now. So I'm gonna go back down into third. It does that fine. 4 to 3 is easy. Okay. So now I'm gonna get just a little bit of speed, a little bit of throttle input. Fourth. Yeah, there it is. A little bit of a flare, then it goes into fourth. And the more you drive it, the worse it gets, until eventually it will refuse to go into fourth and it'll go into limp mode. So that's what's going on. Now, I've actually driven this thing to work and it did fine. It would basically start to flare once I got into the parking lot of my work, but I would be there long enough that the transmission would cool down, and on my way home it would be totally fine, and then again, start to flare once I got home. So the problem with that and taking that risk of daily driving this car the way that it is you don't know when the transmission is just going to decide that it's done its last 3 to 4, and in fact it's done its last 2 to 3 and 1 to 2 in reverse, and you get the picture. It could spontaneously explode and I would be stuck on the side of the road somewhere, and that wouldn't be a very fun day. But as you can see right now, the car is totally drivable. Doesn't make any weird noises. I think there's a tiny exhaust leak, but sometimes that's the catalytic converter cracking. Sometimes it could be just loose bolts. I mean, who knows? All that stuff's gonna get replaced anyway with the E430 stuff that I have, so I'm not too worried about that. One thing I'll say about driving the rear-wheel drive version of this car is it is way faster, like at least off the line, than the all-wheel drive version. So I actually have a 98 V6 all-wheel drive S210 wagon, and it's way slower off the line than this thing is. And I thought that maybe it was just my car, maybe there was something wrong with it, but I drove my father-in-law's and it's the same thing. It feels just as slow. So that's an exciting thing. You get less parasitic loss, obviously, with the rear-wheel drive because there's less components. So putting the V8 in this thing should make it pretty quick. Although, off the top of my head, the V8 is 275 horsepower and the V6 is about 225. So it's not like a monumental jump in horsepower, but it's almost 300 foot-pounds of torque on the V8, so I think we'll notice quite a bit of difference. All right, before we end this video, I want to show you guys some other things, like this is my father-in-law's wagon. He lives with us currently. Nice little rig. There's my other wagon. This is a 98 E320 4MATIC, pretty much fully loaded, parking sensors, orthopedic heated seats, and it's blue with blue interior. It's locked right now, otherwise I'd show you. But this is a really cool car. I'll probably make a dedicated video on this. And then this is also my E55, which has been on the channel before, a long time ago, one of my first videos. Great car, I've had it for about 5.5 years. And right now it's my daily driver because that thing ain't reliable enough. So, into the garage. I'll show you some of the things that we got going on. Like these are the heated and ventilated orthopedic seats. So they have side bolster adjustment. Wow, English is hard. You can see the perforations in the leather for the ventilation. That's the cup holder that's going in the car. And then here's all the harnesses that I need to do it. And then the air ballast, air lines, heated seat, ventilated seat, harness, all that stuff. Good to go. And then over here in this trash pile is the engine. I'm going to be replacing a lot of stuff on here, like the water pump, the crank pulley, the idler, the tensioner, water pump, thermostat, valve cover, gaskets. Basically all the rubber is going to be replaced on this thing. We want to make sure it's fresh and worry-free for as long as possible. Catalytic converters right there that are going on. Here's the rear diff right there. And then in the closet over here, I have something kind of cool. This is the navigation unit I was talking about with the heated and ventilated seat button. Really important to have, otherwise those ventilated seats and heated seats won't work. And then the last thing I want to show you is this. This is the wood and leather steering wheel going in the car. This is actually from a G-Class. They used the same steering wheel for 2002 apparently, with the leather airbag. Leather airbag is actually pretty hard to find, especially in the United States. I haven't really found another W210 with a leather airbag, other than AMGs. AMGs all got leather airbags. All right, well, that's it for this video. I just wanted to introduce the project to you guys. If you're a W210 person, feel free to ask me any questions down below. And I'm going to be replacing a lot of things on this car that are common issues on the W210. So if you have questions, let me know. If you have something that you want me to cover that I'm not necessarily going to be replacing on this car, let me know also, because I've got parts cars and things like that that we can experiment on and hopefully make some videos out of it. So if you are on Instagram, I'm PNW210 on Instagram, and I'm not really on Facebook, so don't go looking for me there. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. See you later.